HP Spectre X360. After about a month, is it still worth it? Let's take a look. Yo, what up YouTube? Crash Wilcox, and got basically a follow-up video to the review that I did on this. I've owned this HP Spectre now for about 30 days, about 40 days actually. And just wanted to come back and readdress it and see if it's still worth the $2,000 that we paid for it. So the way we're going to kind of work through this is give you kind of some pros, some con, pro, con. And then at the end of the video, I will address basically my overall thoughts on if I would still recommend this to you or not. So stick around to the end. You know, some of this stuff may help you. And then also, if you've owned this laptop, I would certainly appreciate if you could drop down in the comments what you think are some of the pros and cons, because they may certainly be different than mine. And that could help somebody either pull the trigger on this or avoid it if you don't think it's for them. So I would certainly appreciate that, and I know they would as well. So before we jump into the first pro, take a second, like the video, subscribe to the channel. You know how to do the thing. All right, here we go. First pro for this. And it's the same pro that I had when I bought it, and that is the look and the feel of this laptop. It is unlike anything else that you're gonna purchase today. You know, the black with the gold trimming, the gem cut design is just gorgeous. The simple little touches like the Spectre on the back here is just, there's nothing like this on the market today. You know, I put this in the same class as like the MacBook Pro and the Dell XPS. And when you look at those, like, you know, a MacBook Pro, for instance, when it first arrived in its heyday, yeah, they were like super sleek and futuristic looking. But here's the secret about Apple. They sort of run out of ideas. I don't know if they've run out of ideas or they're just afraid to break from what they know. But what used to be futuristic and sleek, it's kind of boring now. Dell XPS sort of follows that same mold of, yeah, it's sleek and, you know, maybe futuristic looking, professional looking, I guess is a better word. But another word for professional is boring. This is anything other than that. I feel like you could have this in a very professional setting without being like gaudy and gamery, but it's still unique enough that it's going to catch people's eye and they're going to want to like ask like, what are you using, dude? And so the look and the feel is immaculate. It's heavy without being like, you know, bulky or, you know, unwieldy, but it's just sturdy. So for as, you know, you think as nice as this thing looks, in the way that it's built, it may be flimsy and, you know, not well built, but it's not. It is solid and it feels every bit as premium as it looks. So that is a definite pro on this. The look and the feel is unlike the look is unlike anything you're going to get, you know, in this professional realm. And then for the first con, I would say the big one is just the limited upgradability that this laptop has. So it does come with a decent, you know, component set to it. It's got a 1 terabyte M.2 and it's got 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is plenty. You know, for most people, that's a lot, but you are limited in a sense to that. So you cannot upgrade the RAM. 16 gigs is all you get, but you can upgrade the hard drive, but it only has 1 M.2 slot. So while you can still buy, you know, 8 terabyte M.2s nowadays, if you got that kind of money, you know, you're still limited to just 1 hard drive, which, you know, a lot of people, and me included, I like to have multiple hard drives so I can sort of space or sparse stuff out into different hard drives. And, you know, my brain works better that way, but you can't do that here. So that's a little bit of a con, I would say. So the next pro for this thing, which I would say is probably 1A, if the looks and the feel is number 1, this is 1A. And that would be basically the keyboard and like the typing and just the feel when you're using the keyboard and the typing and stuff. So it has if you guys can see it, a fingerprint scanner here. And this thing is almost 100% accurate. So I've used like the Zephyrus G14 had a fingerprint scanner and the power button. It was pretty sketchy. It didn't work that well. This, I've maybe had it miss once or twice, honestly. That's it. And it's weird when it happens. It's almost 100% accurate. It also has the Windows Hello facial recognition, but that creeps me out personally. So I used a fingerprint scanner and it works wonderfully. HP definitely did a good job with that fingerprint scanner, and the placing of it is very good. It's kind of out of the way, but it's not like hidden in the keys. It's placed really well. The touchpad, while it's not as big as maybe a MacBook Pro or a Dell XPS, it's still big. It's not a small touchpad. You know, it's more wide than it is tall, but it feels wonderful. That glass touchpad, it feels great. It's very accurate, I would say. And the placement of it is very nice. I think because it has the number pad on here and it's shifted over just a little bit, but it's not too far. So like when you're typing on it, I never notice a palming issue on the touchpad. Though the few times that I have had a palming issue, it doesn't seem to affect it very much. So it's not very sensitive in that regard either. So the touchpad is great on this. The clicks are solid. They don't feel, you know, mushy or anything like that. Not terribly hard to push down either, but just a nice satisfying click. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, the keyboard on this is an absolute dream to type on. This thing, the keys are snappy without being like clicky and gamery, if you can hear this. And they have like just enough of a click and a softness behind them that they're just, you know, they're not rigid. I can't really explain it, but the keyboard on this, to me, is immaculate. I absolutely love it. And I like having the 10 pad or the number pad on the side. I wasn't sure that this was going to be a thing that I cared about, but once I had the Zephyrus G14, and if you want to see my review on that, like I said, go check those out. I ultimately sent it back. Not for that reason. There were other reasons I sent it back. But then once I got this, I realized, man, I really like having a number pad. So I like it. It's great. It looks great. You know, it's got just keyboard, the touch, the feel, the fingerprint sensor, fantastic. Again, HP killed it in that regard. The next con that I have on here, and it's not a big con, but it's a bit smudgy. It's not anything like a Razer Blade 15 or something like that where, you know, it just soaks up the oils. It doesn't. Like you can see, I'm kind of, you know, rubbing on here. I don't know how well you can see that on there, but it gets a little smudgy. And the place where you notice it the most, I would say, is there's two places really. So you notice it obviously up here, you know, on the top of the laptop when you're opening it, which, you know, you don't see that very much. Obviously, when you're working on it, it's opened up and you don't see that. But then the second place that you will notice it, and the place I notice it the most, and this is nitpicky, but it irritates me, is this little rubber pad right here. So when you're typing, your hand sits on that rubber pad and it soaks up the oils. And when you close the laptop, the screen hits that. So after a little while of using it, you'll notice a small little smudge on your screen. And it's very tiny and it's hard to see unless it's off, but it's there and that irritates me. So, you know, the only time I really ever clean my screen is to wipe that little smudge off. And it's irritating. Again, it's a little nitpicky. I wouldn't let that be a big con, but it is something. And the smudges, you know, it does pick up smudges like every laptop. So that is a con in my opinion, though not a big one. So the next pro that I have here would be sort of the overall power of the laptop and the components, which I think are fantastic for its price range and its competition. So again, when you're looking at this compared to a Dell XPS or a MacBook Pro, I think it's hard to beat this. You got the i7-10750H, which is a 6-core, 12-thread CPU. It says it can clock up to 5 gigahertz. I've never seen it. You know, but it'll run in that, you know, high 3s to low 4s, you know, pretty regularly. That's more consistent. But then it's got that 1650 Ti in it, which is a very good laptop. If you want to see some of the specs, I'm not going to dive into the specs too much on this, but if you want to see some gameplay and some productivity benchmarks, go check out the other video that I have for this. That'll be, like I said, up here and linked at the end of the video. You can see how this works. But I mean, just for example, I've recently been playing Metro Exodus on this, and 1080p high settings. I've been running it at around 40 to 50 FPS, which for Metro Exodus is perfectly fine. Beautiful game, especially on this screen. It's beautiful. And, when you start getting into games like Fortnite or other, PUBG, free-to-play, esports type titles, 1650 Ti is plenty of graphics card for that. You'll do very well, playing on that. Now, granted, it's a 60 hertz refresh monitor. So, you always have to give in the caveat of like, if you're a professional gamer, which for God's sakes, if you're a professional gamer and you're looking at this, you're not a professional gamer. So, or you're not gaming on this. So it games well, though not a gaming laptop. But those components are great. If you try, you can't get that in a MacBook Pro, right? They don't have NVIDIA graphics cards in a MacBook, and the AMD graphics cards that they have, while fine, you can dabble a little bit in gaming, you can actually do some gaming on this. And for the same level of graphics card and an XPS, you're going to be paying a couple $100 extra. So price to performance on this, I think, is fantastic. You get a lot of power for the money in this laptop. So the next con that I have here is back to sort of that SSD. While it is upgradable, the one that it comes with, I would call a con in this. So it comes with a 1 terabyte SATA SSD essentially, with 32 gigabytes of Intel Optane memory. And that Optane memory is there to serve as sort of a faster cache for that SATA SSD. And while it is fast, if you're used to a hard drive or anything of that sort, it's going to be much faster. And it is fast. I don't want to say that it's not fast. This is a fast laptop, powerful laptop. But comparing that hard drive to other high-end hard drives, a 970 Evo, Western Digital Black, those sorts of SSDs, the NVMe SSDs, it's not very comparable. It's definitely slower than that. Now, from what I gather on Intel Optane, and I'm no genius on Optane, but it works better when you're doing like high or like large amounts of data transfer. So it may not peak as high, whereas like a 970 Evo, it's going to peak really high until it runs out of like its SLC cache or its DRAM buffer, whatever it happens to be. And then the speeds are going to slow down considerably. With Optane memory, it's not going to nearly hit those same peaks, but it's not going to hit those valleys either. It's going to peak pretty high and then settle down at a pretty respectable rate of transfer. So it can transfer larger amounts of information faster over a long period of time. So yeah, ultimately, I would say the SSD, I would have to label that as a con in this, though, you can upgrade it, but then that's more money. So we'll touch on the last con here first. I want to end with a pro, So I would say that this is the, what in the hell? Oh. It comes with these speakers, and they name them like Bang & Olufsen, which would lead you to believe that they're like really great speakers, but I don't think they are. I think that they are average speakers, though they named them. I don't know. I feel like because they had a name, if they didn't give them a name, I would say the speakers are perfectly fine. I wouldn't even have mentioned them. But because they named them Bang & Olufsen, and it comes with its own hardware or software, I'm sorry, in this laptop, I felt like they should have been better, like blow your hair back, type of speakers. And they're just not that. They're perfectly adequate speakers. I like that they're top firing right here, but they're nothing to write home about. They're not MacBook Pro speakers or anything to that effect. So they're fine, but you shouldn't have named them. If you didn't name them, I wouldn't have mentioned them. And then the last one I would tie in, I mentioned that with the software. this laptop seems to have come with like an inordinate amount of bloatware. You know, like HP's got like 11 different programs preloaded on this, and you got like your McAfee, and you got ExpressVPN and all this sort of stuff. And you can obviously get rid of that, but it's an excessive amount in my opinion. So I would call that a con as well, along with the speakers. So, and if you want to see a review of this, I'm going to be doing a review very shortly of this against a Razer Blade 15, and then also a review a little later on of this, the Blade 15 and the MacBook Pro. Once I get that, should be coming in, I don't know, maybe a month or so. I'm a student at Full Sail University, and that's something that they send to you as part of being a student there. So once that comes in, I'll do all of that. So if you want to see those reviews and stuff, please, again, subscribe, hit that bell notification so you don't miss those. And that could be an interesting comparison, especially when it gets into things like speakers and that sort of stuff. But let's end this on a Pro. So the last Pro that I would have here is just sort of like the extras that you would get with this laptop. So it does come with like this nice little folio that you can, you know, kind of like a laptop case, which, you know, it's probably $10, $15 little folio, but that's a nice touch. But more than that, the stylus that it comes with is rechargeable and nice. And this is a 4K touch screen. Whereas you look at like the XPSs and the MacBook Pros, they are not touchscreen. So that is certainly a nice touch when you consider those computers are much more expensive and they don't offer that capability. And from what I've, you know, and I'm no graphic designer, but if you are a graphic designer or you just like to write on the screen and take notes that way or whatever it happens to be, this is a pretty accurate, you know, stylus, and it's sleek, it's nice. It has this nice little carrying case that you can just slide it in there, take it with you. So it doesn't fit inside the laptop, but this, in addition to the touch screen, that seems to be very accurate. Colors are beautiful. I think is a certain pro when you compare it to those other laptops in its ballpark, the XPS and MacBook Pro. So overall, would I recommend the HP Spectre X360 after a month of using it? I have to say a resounding yes. I would certainly recommend this laptop. I think that it has its limitations, much like anything. You know, you're sacrificing something for something else. So you're sacrificing a little bit of upgradeability for just the look and the feel and the user experience of this laptop, which is immaculate. So you have to know what your use case is for a laptop like this. But if what this does fits what you do, I would highly recommend this, especially with the money that you might save over something like an XPS or a MacBook. So overall, I think HP absolutely slayed it with this laptop. I think it's very powerful. It's gorgeous. It's unique. It's touchscreen. It does a lot in a very unique, very well-built package. So I would definitely recommend this laptop. So that's really all I got to say. Again, if you guys found this useful, please like the video. That certainly helps me out. Subscribe to the channel, hit that bell notification. I got more videos coming. It just takes me time to get to them. And also, please, again, if you do own this laptop, I would certainly appreciate you throwing something in the comments. You know, a lot of people might watch the video, they go check out the comments. If you've got something else to say about this, or maybe you disagree with something that I think is a pro or con, whatever it happens to be, please, man, they would appreciate it. I would appreciate it as well. So that's all I got for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. God bless.